Cheers everybody, welcome to another video in the series of albums I love, and we're going back to the 1980s now. We're going to a band which I find absolutely frustrating because this band were brilliant. They were brilliant. This band hit a peak so high relatively early in their career that they never really recovered. They hit a peak for about 3-4 years for two albums, which really blew everybody else away. We're talking Queensryche, and we're talking a particular album. And now this album, for me, I think is, there were some big releases in the 80s. We're talking big releases, 80s rock was some of the biggest rock releases in history, And I think that this album, for me, is the greatest hard rock release of the 80s, for me, without shadow of a doubt. The way it was done, the story, the concept behind it, everything. We're talking Operation Mindcrime, Queensryche. What an album. And I'll tell you what my experience of this album was when I first heard it, how I discovered Queensryche. But we'll go first with the actual concept of this album. This concept is about a heroin addict who gets involved with a political agenda, a political movement, someone who basically hires him to assassinate religious leaders. And obviously, Dr. X, he's called, the man with the cure, basically looks for, obviously, the weakness in an addict is their addiction, heroin. And he gets involved, with killing religious leaders and gets involved with a bit of a nun who's a good goer as well. It's all pretty dark stuff, to be honest. But the album, wow. When I first heard this album, wow. It blew my mind. It did. When you think of concept albums, before I listened to this, when I thought of concept albums, Quadrophenia was my favourite concept album from The Who. Brilliant album, still is. Brilliant album. Might even do a video on it. Then I got onto The Wall, Pink Floyd. Brilliant concept album. Brilliant. Then I went back to Tommy with The Who. Great storytelling. Everything about it. These albums I loved. There I was in a second-hand vinyl shop in my hometown of Eastport. This was in the rack for a couple of quid. Vinyl. I picked it up. Did not know what I was picking up. I heard of the name Queensryche. Did not know much about them. At one point, I thought they were some sort of side project from the rock band Queen. He said, I don't know why. Maybe it was the name Queensryche. Yes, it's kind of like weird. I took it home. I put it on. And I was blown away. Blown away by the narrative, by the seamless music going through the narrative, the story. There wasn't any gaps. Everything was done seamlessly. And after I listened to that album, I thought to myself, wow, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I'll give you the track listing. The track listing, I remember now. It starts off with is it Nikki? Nikki starts off with Nikki in a hospital. I actually was watching an episode of Taggart years ago, and I had that backing track of him in the hospital, and I remember the nurse talking, coming through the door and everything, and Steep Dreams, you bastard. It was on this Tagger program, and he was sitting in the hospital in the background. Unbelievable. And he goes to Anarchy X, Revolution Calling, Operation Mindcrime, Speak, Spreading the Disease, The Mission, Sweet Sister Mary, The Needle Lies, Electric Requiem, Breaking the Silence, I Don't Believe in Love, Waiting for 22, My Empty Room, and what I regard as the greatest Queensryche song of all time, Eyes of a Stranger. You can't go wrong with it. Not only does this tell the story, it also, the music is of the highest caliber. I mean, the reason why I find Queensryche so frustrating was that for me, Queensryche was always been Jeff Tate, phenomenal metal singer. He's got a voice to die for, and Chris D'Agamo, a fantastic guitar player, but what a songwriter as well. Them two for me together is Queensryche, and you know they're no longer in the band no more. The band's still going, and you know when you go and click on YouTube and you see the band now under the Queensryche banner with Michael Wilton and Eddie Jackson, and are just doing David Bowie covers. It's very disappointing. It's something which you know is totally far removed from the band what they were in the 80s, and for me, they are this release is certainly is the greatest release of the 80s for me. I'm not putting any other bands down, but the way this album impacted on me in the 80s was phenomenal, and I haven't really heard a, a progressive album as good ever since. We can talk about Dream Theater. I'll do another video on Dream Theater at some point. But for me, everything flowed, everything was at the right time, and the musicianship was beyond brilliant, beyond brilliant. And the last time they really, obviously they supported Metallica on the Black Album and stuff as well, because they shared the same management. But for me, this album, Operation Mindcrime, yeah, they've done a sequel, which was terrible. Shouldn't even released it. Apparently, Jeff Tate is going to do a third one. But for me, this for me is one of the greatest hard rock releases of the 80s. If you like hard rock music and you like 80s hard rock, that if you listen to it, yeah, the production might not be to everybody's liking. I could get that, but you can't deny the songs on that, the way the story's told, the way it goes through, and it's just brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. It sucked me in when I was at school. I worshipped this band when I was at school, and um, whatever became of them, in the 90s and the 2000s, and the big fallout and suing each other and, punching each other's lights out, whatever. You can't deny that for one moment in time, I think this band was the best band on the planet, and it was down to that album. Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for watching this Albums I Love series. There's going to be another series coming out soon called Guilty Pleasures. That's going to turn up some bloody hairs because I'm going to go on about stuff which you would not expect me to go on about. Albums which I like, but from bands I shouldn't like. See you on another one. Bye bye.